Chapter 23-29 The Lunarian Legion 1. This place is located near the huge crack in the moon. They can even see large chunks of lunar debris bulging out from the central region of the moon, as if impacted by some powerful force, forming a majestic mountain. But this mountain peak seems poised to detach from the moon and fly into space at any moment. Even around this detached mountain peak, numerous broken rocks have formed a ring-like structure. The Dreamer landed near the battlefield. Since neither unit knew who the approaching ships were, they temporarily stopped what they were doing and carefully checked the incoming warships. On the ship, Morana and the others were all shocked by the battlefield of the Lunarians. It seems we've come at the wrong time. But since we're already here, we should at least communicate with them. This saves us the trouble of looking for them. But soon, Zhang Yi covered his head and said helplessly, "But they don't seem to welcome us very much." Because a large number of soldiers from both armies had surrounded the warships. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Hundreds of small spaceships surrounded them, their lights flashing intermittently, clearly indicating that weapons were in position. Go out and talk to them. The super battleships have protective shields, so they are not afraid of conflict with them, but there is no need to. Zhang Yi and the others came out of the cabin. Upon seeing the human form, the Lunarians from both the Black and White armies clearly showed expressions of confusion and astonishment. They had never seen such a creature before. Clad in demonic armor, Zhang Yi approached the edge of the warship and addressed the Moon people. "We come from Earth and harbor no ill intentions. We are here to investigate the lunar collapse." He used a loudspeaker to project the sound far and wide, ensuring that both armies could hear it thanks to the thin atmosphere of the moon. Yes, the moon in this world has air. Otherwise, everyone would be deaf. He knew that since the people of the monarchic church could communicate with the moon people, it meant that this race possessed an extremely advanced civilization and had been observing everything on the surface of Earth. Therefore, they should be able to understand human language. Sure enough, after hearing Zhang Yi's words, the two generals of the Black Army and the White Army exchanged a glance from afar. There seemed to be something called tacit understanding in their eyes. The next instant, the Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon moved simultaneously, issuing an attack order to Zhang Yi and the others on the super battleship. Powerful energy beams erupted from the spaceships, and the two armies on the ground ceased their battle and began a frenzied attack on the Dreamer's energy shield. This sudden turn of events made many people on board tense. "What's wrong with these guys? Why are they attacking us?" Brian said somewhat angrily. "The Dreamer's energy shield is extremely powerful. Dense attacks falling on it are like raindrops falling into a lake. There will be no danger in the short term, but defense also requires energy." Zhang Yi didn't want to sit idly by and wait for the enemy to break through his defenses. Damn it! Since the moon people were so unfriendly, Zhang Yi wouldn't just sit idly by. His eyes flashed, and he thought of those guys from the Holy See of Junjing, cursing them all in his heart. Didn't we agree to give each other notice before we came? Could it be that we've been scammed? However, the three spaceships landed at roughly the same time, and they were not far from this place. If they were attacked, the people on those two ships would likely be in no better shape. However, the fact that war has broken out so suddenly and without any clear explanation is truly frustrating for Zhang Yi. He thought for a moment, then suddenly turned his gaze to Gao Changkong, who was next to Di Shirtian. "Gao Changkong, go and investigate why they did this?" Gao Changkong's ability to predict the future behavior of a specific person can be used to predict their future behavior trajectory. Although this is only the most reasonable deduction based on existing factors, it may not become reality. However, it is still possible to use this to deduce the other party's motives for taking action. Gao Changkong smiled gently. "All right." He stepped forward, and a powerful surge of supernatural energy emanated from his body, instantly reaching a supernatural energy index of 28,000 points. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel a little emotional. It was already quite remarkable that he could reach this level under the suppression of Emperor Shirtian. I wonder if this cunning guy has been hiding his true strength. After all, he's a master of disguise. Stones formed of runes appeared behind him, each engraved with ancient runes, symbolizing a special ability. This is Gao Changgong's ability, Heavenly Dance Treasure Wheel. He activated the Zen Meditation Seal, S ability, Reincarnation Deduction, locking onto the most conspicuous target in the crowd, the strange black dragon. A causal light flickered in his eyes, and he quickly deduced something based on his personal information. Everything was accomplished in an instant, but for Gao Changkong, it felt like an extremely long time had passed. He snapped out of his daze, looked around, and had a slightly bewildered expression. There's no way around it. Time flies by, and once an ability is activated, the mental world must endure for 100 days. Even if you've used this ability many times, it's still difficult to fully adapt to it. So, did you find anything? Gao Changkong sighed and said with a solemn expression, "They are sacrificing us, using us as sacrifices." Upon hearing this word, everyone's expression turned extremely grim. They understand sacrifice, of course. It means taking their lives. The specific reasons are still unclear because I don't have enough information yet, so the future I'm predicting is very vague. But for now, let's get through this difficult time. A cold smile curled at the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth. Difficulties? Sorry. Those are theirs. He was attacked for no reason right from the start. Does he really think Zhang Yi has a good temper? Zhang Yi said to Lu Karen and the others, "You guys stay here and keep control of the dreamer. The rest of you come with me, and we'll teach them a lesson." After saying that, he gave Morana and the others a look and rushed out of the energy shield first. Morana and the others were naturally not afraid. No matter how strong the Lunarians were, this time they had gathered more than half of the top human experts. It's impossible to be afraid. Brian was dressed in camouflage, a super combat suit tailor-made for him by Professor Da Vinci. Although his paws weren't very long, he looked pretty cool with a pair of big sunglasses. There's no other way. On the moon, the atmosphere is thin and the light is too intense, so protective measures must be taken. If you leave a lizard man here, he'll probably die very quickly. Chapter 2330, The Lunarian Legion, 2. Let's party time. Brian adjusted his sunglasses, then leaped coolly off the warship, slamming his paws down onto the ground. Large numbers of soldiers from both the Black and White armies attacked from all sides, but they were still halfway there. Brian murmured, "Overweight." Centered on Brian's hands, an invisible wave of gravity suddenly rippled outwards from beneath the earth. The gravity within a radius of several thousand meters was magnified thousands of times. The soldiers, who were used to the moon's light and heavy forces, were suddenly pulled like this, and their bodies felt as if they had been swatted down by a fly swatter. Bang! 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 One after another, soldiers from both sides were slammed to the ground, sinking deep into the earth. Many soldiers were instantly turned into mincemeat. These warriors are extremely powerful, and even ordinary soldiers have a human ability index of over 9,000 points. However, compared to Brian, whose superpower index was over 30,000, it was still completely inadequate. Brian stood up coolly, adjusted his sunglasses, and said, "Humph, you guys are still a long way off." Morana, along with Indra, Saladin, and others, also made their appearances. Only then did the Black and White armies realize that these humans were far more powerful than they had imagined. Among the two armies, a group of warriors whose strength reached the level of Epsilon emerged and began to fight them. Zhang Yi floated in midair above the moon, where gravity was only 1/6 that of Earth. He felt his body stretch out more comfortably, almost like Superman. But then again, he is a Superman himself. Looking down at the army of 100,000, he didn't hesitate at all, directly unfolding a huge dimensional gate in the sky, completely enveloping them. Immediately afterwards, millions of gun barrels and cannon barrels extended out, the deafening roar audible hundreds of kilometers away. Billions of bullets rained down, their power amplified by Brian's gravitational field. These weapons are no longer ordinary guns and cannons, but have been modified by the mechanical life forms of the Lu Ke Ran Arms factory, making them even more powerful. It is on par with the mechanical life form weapons of the Tsongyuan clan. Therefore, The rain of bullets descended, and the dense barrage instantly pierced through a large number of soldiers, resulting in extremely gruesome deaths. The commanders of both armies who witnessed all of this could not tolerate it. The two looked at each other and made the same decision. Roar! A deafening, beast-like roar erupted from the Silver Centaur's mouth. He pointed his spiral lance at the sky, and with a crack sound, drew down a powerful bolt of lightning from the heavens, then aimed it at Zhang Yi and unleashed it. A colossal thunder dragon, several kilometers long, roared and surged forward. The black dragon of the Black Army swelled up its belly, and after gathering its strength, it suddenly spat out a thin pillar of fire, attacking Zhang Yi from another direction. Zhang Yi stood between the two, a cold smile playing on his lips. When he arrived, he had already witnessed the battle between the two. According to the Intelligent Systems analysis of their energy overflow levels, the Silver Centaur's power index is 42,000 points, and the Black Dragon's power index is 42,300 points. These two combined are no match for Zhang Yi, whose superpower index has reached 45,000 points. Since his debut, Zhang Yi has always been in a state of being invincible. After all, those weaker than him are not even qualified to break through his defenses. Zhang Yi stood still, neither dodging nor avoiding, simply raising his hands to face the two. A huge spherical barrier formed outside his body. The two realms are now severed, separating two worlds, an absolutely impenetrable barrier. This is Zhang Yi's most primal and powerful defensive capability. Boom! Two violent energies surged into Zhang Yi's dimensional gate from two different directions. The gate, like a bottomless pit, continuously devoured the two energies, but showed no signs of being destroyed. The silver-white centaur and the black dragon stared in disbelief. Both of them were top-notch generals in their respective countries, yet now they were at a disadvantage against a weak human from Earth. Yes, they certainly know what humans are, they're just seeing them for the first time. The sixth generation of humans was incredibly weak. Before they had even reached their full potential, they were forced to face their demise due to the changes in this world. But in the long history of this universe, they are just an insignificant speck. During Earth's 4.6 billion-year lifespan, although humanity has been divided into 6 eras, this does not mean that each generation of life has only one type. Perhaps after this generation of humans goes extinct, 1,000,000 years later, another primate chosen by the Creator will continue to evolve into a new human. The Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon had no time to marvel, because Zhang Yi had already discerned their level of strength. The energy he absorbed from his alternate dimension was far from enough to cause the space to collapse. So Zhang Yi smirked. Is this all the strength the moon people have? Do they really think we Earthlings are pushovers? No. I'll let you taste your own power. Zhang Yi's hands suddenly twisted in midair, and all the attacks he absorbed actually flew over his body and towards the person opposite him in the original direction. It was as if Zhang Yi's space was just a transit station, so the Silver Centaur's attack was directed at the Black Dragon, and the Black Dragon's attack was directed at the Silver Centaur. Before they could even react to Zhang Yi blocking their attack, they were immediately faced with a new attack. They had no time to prepare, and were hit directly. Boom! Boom! The Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon were instantly blasted away. On Earth, the human force numbered only a few dozen, but they were all top-tier experts from Earth. Morana, Indra, Brian, Saladin, and others were each an army in themselves. Although there are quite a few Inhumans of the Epsilon level in the Lunarian army. However, Bishop-level superhumans with an ability index of over 30,000 are not common, and are extremely rare, even among the Lunarian forces. Although they held back in their methods, the aftershocks of their attacks still killed a large number of soldiers from both the Black and White armies. In an instant, the battlefield was awash in blood. The Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon then realized that they had messed with the wrong person. The strength of the Earthlings far exceeded their imagination. But the two did not back down at all, and still charged towards Zhang Yi bravely and fearlessly. Based on Zhang Yi's strength, they judged that this person must be the leader of the Earthlings. Zhang Yi stopped being polite and slowly transformed the divine weapon in his hand into a huge, blood-red demonic blade. The local races are so rude, they need to be taught a lesson. Chapter 23:30 The Lunarian Legion 3. Zhang Yi didn't intend to hold back any longer. He could see that the Moon people had absolutely no respect for the Earth people. To gain recognition from others, you don't rely on constant compromise, but rather on showcasing your talents. People respect capable and assertive individuals, but look down on those with gentle natures. With the demonic blade in hand, the void behind Zhang Yi opened up, and that dark substance surged out like thick water, covering his armor and the demonic blade. Zhang Yi raised his demonic blade and swung it fiercely in all directions, drifting in the dark realm. The matter, so dark it could devour everything, formed a massive dark storm that swirled and swept in all directions. Upon sensing that terrifying power, both the Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon wore expressions of utter shock. This is the power of a demon god. But they had no time to be surprised, because in an instant, the Black Storm, centered on Zhang Yi, transformed into a giant star, which was still expanding violently and had already enveloped everything in all directions. A large number of soldiers were caught up in it, without even uttering a sound, and in an instant all the matter on their bodies was decomposed into their most primitive state. The Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon also faced the onslaught of the Dark Realm. They unleashed their power, with thunder and flames roaring as they bombarded the massive dark star from both sides. But it was all in vain. The difference in power caused their alien energy to be directly swallowed up by the Dark Realm, and terrifying power bombarded their bodies. An extremely cold and dark feeling came over them, and even the warmth on their bodies was completely absorbed. It was like a dark swamp, about to devour everything on them. The two were terrified and roared as they unleashed their full power, but they were ultimately swallowed up by the darkness. Just moments later, their heavily wounded bodies plummeted from the sky, their battle suits torn to shreds, blood gushing from their bodies. Zhang Yi coldly looked down at them from high above. Now, do you know you were wrong? He didn't kill the two men because he still needed the Lunarians to provide him with information. Otherwise, based on their initial attack on him, Zhang Yi would have already cut off their heads. The Silver Centaur, panting heavily, stared at Zhang Yi and asked, "Are you an apostle of the demon god?" He was speaking Chinese. Just as Zhang Yi had thought, the Moon people's technology was quite advanced. After all, they were fourth-generation intelligent life forms, so it was not impossible for them not to master the language of the 6 generations they had been observing for millions of years. "What's the meaning?" Zhang Yi asked coldly. The Silver Centaur stared at Zhang Yi, sensing a power from him similar to that of the demon god sealed in the moon. However, he did not possess the same aura as the fallen apostles of the Dark Sun Forest. Throughout the battlefield, Zhang Yi's suppression of the 2 army commanders gave the human forces an overwhelming advantage. A large number of soldiers from both armies were killed. Zhou Ke, watching all this from inside the safe warship, said with some worry, "Now, we've made enemies with the Lunarians. What a terrible start." They had originally planned to get help from the Lunarians to solve the problem of the moon's collapse. Now, perhaps before resolving their troubles, they will first wage war against the Lunarians. Yang Xinxin did not disembark unless absolutely necessary. She disliked getting her hands stained with blood, but she did enjoy seeing the land stained red with war and blood. Demonstrating strength is the foundation for gaining respect. This trouble isn't just ours. They must be troubled by it themselves. "Let's negotiate first," Yang Xinxin said calmly. Zhang Yi slowly descended from the sky. The battlefield had been quickly brought under their control. The 2 commanders were completely powerless against Zhang Yi. The difference in strength was beyond their comprehension, and the power emanating from Zhang Yi left them both astonished and uncertain. "Now, I need to ask you some questions. For example, who are you, and why are you fighting here?" Zhang Yi asked calmly, pointing his demonic blade at the ground. If these 2 didn't give him a satisfactory answer, he wouldn't mind giving them 2 more blows. The silver centaur, clutching its wound, slowly stood up. You're from Earth? The sixth generation from Earth. I remember you were very weak. You didn't even have mastered the power of ether. Due to a certain peculiar preference of the creator, each of the 6 generations of humans possessed humanoid characteristics. However, there are differences between them. For example, the 5 generations of people were basically modeled after reptiles, with scales and tails. The same applies to dragons, lizardmen, and the Nash kingdom. However, the people of the land by the lake are an exception. They are rodents from the same era as reptiles, who were infused with fragments of ether. The Feather clan among the 4th generation of the Ihuan clan, Drucker of the 3rd generation, and so on, are all so-called humanoids. However, you can tell which generation it belongs to just by looking at its appearance. The lunar people had observed Earth for a long time, so they had witnessed the development of humankind. 5 years ago, humanity was still a weak and pitiful race, lacking awakened supernatural abilities, and with a very backward level of technology. That's why the Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon were surprised by the super battleship Zhang Yi displayed and his strength. Zhang Yi simply replied, "Evolution is explosive, not gradual." Upon hearing this, the Silver Centaur and the Black Dragon looked shocked, as if they had suddenly realized something, and nodded in understanding. Just as Zhang Yi was about to continue questioning, his powerful sixth sense suddenly detected a strong force rapidly approaching from his right. Zhang Yi looked up and saw a dazzling silver light shimmering on the horizon. A crescent-shaped spaceship sped in and hovered above the battlefield. The moment the Silver Centaur saw the spaceship, his eyes lit up. He glanced at Zhang Yi and smiled. "If you have anything to say, you should talk to our guardian." Zhang Yi's eyes narrowed. He knew that a powerful Lunarian figure, even stronger than the Silver Centaurs, had arrived. The silver crescent-shaped spaceship slowly descended, and a beam of light shone from the central exit onto the ground. Then, within that light, the appearance of a silver humanoid creature gradually materialized. A woman. An extremely beautiful woman, so beautiful it seemed unreal, like a cold, two-dimensional queen meticulously crafted by an artist, or the most expensive giant humanoid doll. Zhang Yi described the other person in this way because the other person's appearance and physique were impeccable. But because it is so beautiful, it seems somewhat unreal. However, Zhang Yi soon saw several familiar faces. It turned out that the 2 members of the Holy See had appeared behind her. Disciplined priest Orion and mourning nun Leibniz.